Go again.
3, 2, 1. Time. Welcome back to the Movement for Life podcast. My name is Colby Christophic. I am missing the young and the beautiful JR Jaquay today. It is just me here, but we are talking about ways to keep us moving throughout our life. And today we've got some special guests, Mr. and Mrs. Dusty and Cecily Breeding. Before I kind of get into chatting with these guys, we always start out each episode talking about how we moved in the previous week. So let's start with Dusty. Dusty, tell me some stuff that you've done to stay physically active in the past week.
This last week, I actually went on 3 5K runs, which is probably more running than I've done in the last 6 months. So I did some 5K runs with a friend.
Or last 6 years.
In the last 6 years. Not true. I did the half Ironman. That was a lot of
That's
running.
True. You're right.
And then we played catch yesterday, like old school catch.
Whoa.
baseball here at our place.
Yeah, we like to play in the parking lot. I also played catch, and CrossFit is my primary form of fitness, and so I was at the gym a couple times over the last week. Not every day, not as much as I would like to be, but I dropped in for some CrossFit classes, and then I also I stay pretty active outside in my garden around this time of year, doing,
Nice.
I'm pulling the weeds, I'm trimming the branches, you got to prune some stuff back, and then you have to walk it all over to the dumpster. So it's like low, very low zone cardio. So I count that as moving because it is.
You're a plant mom. Is that a thing?
I sure am. I do love the plants. I love to watch them grow.
It's like a dog mom, but for plants. Plant mom.
And maybe cheaper, but maybe not. Plants can be.
You're not wrong. Yeah, plants can be expensive. My plants are not expensive though.
But they can be. I've definitely seen Cecily take clippings of plants that were not hers.
100%. Want to be pruned. They want to be pruned, and then they want to start a new life somewhere else with me. So I'm not sorry about that.
With their plant mom. That's great. I'm with you, Cecily. CrossFit is where I get most of my fitness in, but I also like playing quite a bit. I did some jujitsu this last week, which was fun. I did a couple of days of CrossFit. I did my first day of Murph prep, which left me a lot more sore than I remember. And I'm like, wow, I'm glad that we do this and we don't just do Murph on Memorial Day. On Saturday, I did a High Rocks prep workout. I'm not doing the High Rocks, but I did a High Rocks prep workout. Then I did a skills and squad workout. And then I went and played pickleball for 2.5 hours.
That's an indication that you've chosen good friends right there, because I think you can either spend a lot of time in the gym being fit, or you can engineer a life that forces you to be fit. And it sounds like you do the first, but you have done the latter too. So I think that's a success.
Well, thank you for sharing, guys. I want to kind of just introduce Dusty and Cecily. Dusty and Cecily have been friends of mine 2012, I believe. So coming up on 14 years. I've known them in a couple of different capacities, from being their first CrossFit coach while I was at Pepperdine University. Dusty was the student minister or university minister at the university church, and became friends outside of CrossFit. And they've also been coming and doing CrossFit with us here at Oxnard Movement, which has been super awesome, a really good blessing for us to have. And leading some events for our staff and leading some events for our members and things like that. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do for work.
Yeah, and interestingly, I would say fitness has no direct connection with really any of the employment work that we do, but it is very much a part of our life, and I think empowers us to do what we do professionally. And gosh, so many connections between a life of fitness and a life of successful entrepreneurship as well. But to answer your question, I own a coaching practice called the Skull and Bone Society, and we help people live with the end in mind. And what that means is, in my work, I get to sit down with individuals and couples really from around the United States who are thinking intentionally about their future. And I get to pose good questions and help them craft a plan to go from where they're at today to where they want to be. Often this is in the realm of finances. I do a lot of personal finance coaching, but it's also bigger than that. It can be about fitness. It can be about their goals, their professional development. Sometimes it's about relationships. So it covers a variety of different areas, but it is all rooted in that idea that at the time we have on earth is precious and sometimes limited. And so you should use it intentionally and spend it intentionally to maximize meaning. So that's what I get to do for the majority of my work.
Awesome.
I love that.
And for my work, I am a creative. I do primarily digital work in terms of I build websites, I do graphic design, I'm a photographer. I work in a variety of capacities with my clients, but like the way I like to explain it in shorthand is that most businesses in this world need some form of digital design, and most entrepreneurs didn't start their businesses to start like noodling around with websites or figuring out an online store or cutting together a video or something like that. And so that's where my skill set comes in. I tend to fill that gap of digital needs creatively for a lot of my clients in terms of, do they need product photos? Do they need stock photography? Do they need slide decks designed in a way that get the communication or get the message across well to their audience? And I do all of those things. I love it. I've been doing it for 10 years.
And spoiler alert, I've used both of your guys' services on multiple occasions. So if you're wondering if they do a good job, the answer is yes. And if you don't believe me, go check out their Google listing pages and see some reviews. Okay. One of my favorite things that you guys kind of do together, you do it separately as well, but you've done it several times together, is teach a course on how to live a values-based life. And to me, in that course, you talk a lot about the connection with your identity, or like who you want to be your identity to be, and how you approach that and tackle that. So you have to create some vision for yourself in order to be some version of yourself. And I think that is absolutely true when you're talking about living a healthy life. Like it has to be a part of your value system or your identity. I want to know how you guys see that connection between like identity and like values, and the relationship between fitness and identity.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
I'd answer that by starting kind of backwards. I think that when we work with individuals and clients, first of all, it's really the outpouring of what we do with ourselves and our own marriage and our own as individuals. So it's not just some business thing that we do. It's kind of who we are that we get to bring to others in a professional realm. But it's really starting by thinking with the end in mind and thinking about what are you actually working towards? And the reason we start there is because if you don't know the answer to that, it's impossible for me to tell you or for us to make a plan to get there. You have to know. I mean, it's like, Colby, you sail, and you can't just go out into the water and expect to get somewhere if you don't have a location in mind. And even if that location is just, we're going to sail around and have a good day, right? Well, that is your destination. That is the vision for a sailing trip. Sail around and have a good day. But it requires clarification of that. And so that's kind of where we start when we work with clients, is we start with thinking about what you want in the future. Now, the question then becomes, how do you answer that? How do you know what you want?
Yeah.
That connects with the work of values and clarifying what matters most to you, why it matters to you, where that desire comes from. And that's some really deep work.
Yeah, and I think the goal setting course that we share and that we guide people through, and we do this with individuals, we do this with groups of people. We also have video recordings of it on our website too. We've led this dozens of times. And the reason we do it is mostly because we started doing it within ourselves and as individuals and as a couple, and discovered that this is like the master key to doing everything else in life. The ability to identify where you want to go, where you are today, what the path is between where you are today and where you want to be, and who your community is that's cheering you on and helping you out and being impacted by your choices. And that framework, I did not make that up. That's called intentional change theory. That's from Professor Boyatzis over at Case Western. And when we learned that and applied it to goal setting, we realized that it applies to our healthy marriage. It applies to a healthy physique, a healthy body, how you organize your nutrition and how you identify what to eat and what not to eat. It also impacts how you show up as a business person, regardless of whether you own your own business or not. These are not just skills that entrepreneurs need to know. These are skills that employees should have, that teammates should have, that parents should have, that teachers should have. These are skills that guide someone toward better living. And I know you've had that experience too, Colby. I mean, I imagine that you have implemented this same framework as you pilot your own life, your sailboat, your business, and your fitness.
Yeah, I think that the fun thing about that is it is like stepping on the bridge between like knowledge and behavior, like understanding the values. Like you're like, for most people, they know what they should be doing. They're like, oh, I know what it takes to do this, and I know what it takes to do that. I know what it takes to do this. But the clarification of values is like the first step to like the behavior change that is required to that.
Yes.
And like, if you try to skip the first step, you miss the bridge. Like, it's really difficult to stay fit. It's really difficult to have a good marriage. It's really difficult to be good parents if you don't first clarify those things. And so I think that course that you guys teach is like mind blowing and eye opening for so many people, even though it's incredibly simple. It's a very simple. It's deep, like you said, Dusty, and I think the deeper that you can get in that course, the more valuable that it is for you. So, but deep doesn't necessarily mean it's difficult. Deep just means that it takes reflection and thoughtfulness on a lot of what you want.
I actually think the process of knowing what matters most to you, what you value, is not easy. I think it's very difficult to discern, in part because of the advertisements that we see, over 10,000 a day. And those are all things that are pulling you towards what someone else wants you to value and care about, rather than doing the work to try to understand what actually matters to you. So I actually think it's really hard. It's swimming upstream to say, I'm going to set aside the things that other people want me to care about and instead reflect, meditate, concentrate on what is internally motivating to me. I think that's much harder.
Well, and if I could ask you the question, how does someone know what is internally motivating to them? How does someone know what they value? Of all the things that are possible out there to value, there are many things worth valuing. How does someone know? How do I know that I value X over Y?
It's a great question. And I get to do this with my clients, which is one of my favorite things, is to dive into this discussion. And what we do in my work is we use what's called the Values Origin Map, which is a tool that I've created to help explore what matters most to you and why that is. Where did it come from? And so we spend time looking at your family of origin. We spend time looking at the media that you consume, the friends that you keep, your religious or philosophical frameworks that impact those things. And even through all of that, I would say this is not like, it's not like searching for a needle in a haystack. That presupposes that there is one thing that you will find. And instead, I think the clarifying your values is an ongoing, lifelong journey of discernment. So it's not a one and done thing. but it's an ever evolving process, maybe.
Yeah, it reminds me of actually an experience that you and I had yesterday, and we were talking about it on the drive home. That we had lunch with a couple friend of ours who invited us over to their house, and they fed us lunch. They sat at the table and chatted with us for an hour after we finished eating. And it was spur of the moment. They invited us over to their home, and when we were reflecting on that experience and just how much we treasure that relationship and how much we admire them as human beings and as friends, and they are that generous and that welcoming and that hospitable with everyone. They have that experience of running into us and inviting us over to their home probably happens multiple times a week for them. And so that to me is an indicator when you look at this couple and when you look at this family, they probably spend thousands of dollars on food every month because they're feeding people all the time. And they spend hours of their time preparing food, eating food with friends, inviting people over, and then spending time in conversation, having quality interactions long after the meal is over. And so one of the conversations we have is, if you want to know what your values are, look at how you spend your resources. Look at how you spend your time and your money. And so if I were to use this couple as kind of a case study, it's quite obvious that they spend their resources, their time and their money, of which it's finite. Everyone only gets 24 hours in a day. And so they're spending their time and their money on relationships, specifically in the form of shared meals. Now, if you look out in this family's driveway, their cars are old and they're not in tip-top shape and they haven't been washed recently. So do they spend their time and their money on vehicles? No. They spend their time and their money on cultivating quality relationships that stand the test of time. And so I think when someone is asking, how do I know what I value? I think a solid place to start is, where am I spending my time? Where am I spending my money? And that's one of the things we talk about, is that those are your two primary resources, your time and your money. That is what you have to spend on this planet.
And
go ahead.
Just to accentuate that, I would also say it's important to reflect on what you were happy that you spent your time and your money on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, all of us do this, but sometimes we spend time and money on things, and then we look back and we say, wow, that was not worth it.
Yeah.
And I mean, this relates to this fitness conversation, because our CrossFit memberships over the years that we've paid for have added up to a fair amount of money. When you think of 10 years of gym memberships, but every penny of that has been well worth it for the life that it has allowed us to live with our bodies.
You talked about a lot of your practice is doing it for yourselves and then leading it for other people. And so this values-based life, I know you guys have done it dozens and dozens of times. You guys are a couple. Like, as far as fitness goes, do you guys have a shared like goalposts or values when it comes to like living a healthy life? Or is that something that, you know, only Cecily has and Dusty's dragged along, or some other piece like that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's one that I think a lot of couples actually wrestle with, is how are we going to make fitness, or more broadly health and wellness and movement, a part of our life and a part of our us identity? Because especially individuals who themselves have a relationship with sport or with fitness or with activity on some level, when they make a couple, that couple has to discover what the couple's relationship with movement and with sport is going to be. And that can be a painful for some couples, and I would argue that there are growing pains for any couple, because, and the reason for that is because, just like a relationship where both individuals are bringing to that relationship individual history, individual baggage, individual preferences, perhaps even some like history of trauma, that it's the same thing with wellness and fitness, that each individual has to bring their history and their story. If you show me a couple that has a good relationship with fitness together, I guarantee you each developed a healthy relationship with fitness. And then and only then were they able to create a healthy couple relationship with fitness. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, really, our fitness or our anything that we do that is fitness related is actually not about the fitness itself. It's more about the shared experience that and the time that we have together and the way we feel after we do that thing. And so we do a variety of different physical things. We hike, we run, we bike, we CrossFit, but those are all things that are really proxies for connection. And I believe that connection happens through facing challenge arm in arm. And all of our physical experiences are little glimpses of that, where we're facing a challenge side by side, arm in arm.
Do you think it is more difficult to be healthy as a couple versus as an individual, or do you think it is more advantageous or easier to be fit when you are a part of a couple?
Well, okay, I have thoughts on that, and I think you do too. One thing, and I'll speak just as a female, and I will gender this, and some of the women listening to this will agree, and some will feel that it's the opposite. Fine, switch up the roles as needed. But in my experience of our couple relationship with fitness, I think I speak for a number of women when I say that when you marry an active guy who's into fitness, when he says early on in your relationship, "Hey, do you want to go to the gym with me?" Instantly I decode that in my brain to think he thinks I need to work out. He thinks what's the coded language in that? I need to read between the lines here. Does it also mean that XYZ? And so I might take that and make it mean something that he didn't mean to say. He meant, do you want to go to the gym with me because it's a shared experience, or because he just wants to share something that he loves and wants to have that shoulder to shoulder time with his buddy? And I took that to mean that there was that he was insinuating that I needed to work out because he was in some way unsatisfied with who I was or how I looked. Wow. And so and I'm pretty sure I can speak for a lot of people, and maybe a lot of couples can relate to that sort of experience. And so to those couples, I would say that and that's why I say each individual has to develop a healthy relationship with fitness, and a healthy relationship with their bodies, and a healthy relationship with sport, and why they are going to the gym and showing up at the gym. Because if you're showing up at the gym to please someone else, or because of some perception you have about why they want you showing up at the gym, then you are allowing yourself to be tyrannized by that other person. And what builds as a result of tyranny? Resentment, victim mindset, eventual blame. There are so many negative emotions downstream of that. So a lot of my journey in exploring what fitness looked like as a couple was exploring why I wanted to show up at the gym in the first place. And when I started which is why I love CrossFit so much, because only at CrossFit did I discover that I was showing up at the gym not because I was pursuing numbers on a scale or inches or a particular body image or anything like that, but rather I was pursuing a pull-up. I was pursuing a certain mile time or a particular skill. I was learning how to do double unders. I was learning new skills every day. And I realized after a few months of CrossFitting that I was showing up at the gym not because I disliked my body, but because I liked my body. And that's an incredibly important shift for a lot of women, and probably also men too. Like, again, I don't mean to gender it, but I think if you can discover movement because you like yourself, not because you dislike yourself, then that leads you into more life-giving movement. and create space for it to be a joyful experience as a couple rather than a punishing experience or from a place of of lack.
That was a
Just thought
nugget for sure. And some really good perspective that I didn't think about. And as you explain it, I'm like nodding my head the entire time.
It makes me think about, or your question makes me think about this quote that is often called an African proverb. I don't know if that is actually its origin,
I know
but
what you're gonna say.
It says this is an African proverb. So I don't know if that's the actual origin, but the phrase, the concept makes sense,
Yeah.
and it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, or something like that, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the way I would describe fitness as a couple. Like, if your goal, and this gets back to your vision, if your goal is to be an elite CrossFit competitor, an elite triathlete, like, maybe training alone, there's some
Value,
some goodness there. Yeah, I mean, that might be the right strategy. Maybe it doesn't matter if your partner is supportive of that. But if you're talking about a lifetime of moving your body, a lifetime of enjoying what you can do in the outdoors, if you're talking about fitness for life, being fit to do the things you want to do, I think a great partner is a really critical tool to.
I think where you live has a really big impact on your likeliness or motivation to get fit, to stay moving, to do things. And for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, rather just listening, Dusty and Cecily are sitting in their lovely home that is a camper van, which presents itself with potential challenges or potential upside to the health and fitness world. So how did you guys create, vision or value with fitness when it concerns like your home and how you live as well?
Well, we have no gym garage, garage gym, so that's like not really an option. But I think our space forces us outside more.
Yes.
We live in 100 square feet. And so when I wake up in the morning and make my coffee, I usually step outside, and sometimes I walk, sometimes I just sit outside, but it gets us outdoors more. Yeah. And we both believe that being outdoors is maybe the most natural way to move your body, right? Just kind of being in nature. So I think that's a big component.
Yeah, I was going to say that, getting outside for sure. We're not home gym people anyway. We have lived in normal homes in the past, and we actually just bought a house in Texas, and it's a normal house, and we could do a home gym, and we're not going to because I certainly am this way, and I think Dusty is by osmosis, by virtue of being married to me. I'm a pack animal. I need to work out with other people, and I need to if I could buy a barbell and keep it at home, but it would rust. I need to go to a gym. I need to see people. I need to have a coach encourage me and also give me a standard and help me reach for it. So I definitely need to be part of a community of discipline, and I would argue that pretty much all human beings are that way. Human beings are attracted to communities of discipline, whether they want to admit that or not. And I think you see that in
all
education, you see that in fitness, you see that in faith communities. If you're involved in a faith community, we want to pursue a discipline and then look around and see that there are other people that are also on that journey. And when you know that about yourself and when you know that about humans, if you can seek out communities of discipline, you will make the discipline more fun. And I'll leave it at that. You'll make the discipline more fun.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think that before someone decides that they want to do some tiny home living, they got to figure out like, hey, am I going to be wanting people to invite people over to my home gym to work out with me, or am I not going to want to do that? Because if you want to do that, tiny home living might not be for you. You guys have said that, being outside is high on your values list. And one of the things that you guys have done a lot over the years is both led outdoors trips for other people and also for yourselves, done some crazy adventures, just the two of you, to see, hey, could we do something like this? I want to know your favorite event or adventure that you guys have ever led. And then on the flip side of that, what's the favorite one that you've done just the two of you?
I have one thing that I'll say to the person on the couch. All right, so to someone who's listening to this and they're thinking about, someday I will pursue adventure. Someday I want to do that thing. Someday I want to, but they're getting in their head thinking maybe it's too late in my life, or I don't know how to get started, or I need to get fit before I pursue adventure. And to that person, I would say, you will be amazed when you show up for that adventure, whatever that adventure is, that there are people doing it who are less fit or less qualified, whatever that looks like. Yeah, less qualified to be there than you thought. And what I mean by that, I'll illustrate this by telling my own experience of running my first marathon. I've never thought of myself as a runner my whole life. I'm much more of like a weightlifter, sprinter, like, shorter distance, heavier stuff. But I signed up for a marathon because people do that. It's kind of like one of those bucket listy sorts of things. And so I signed up for a marathon, and it was the LA Marathon, and it was a few years ago, and they ran it on St. Patrick's Day. And yeah, you ran the LA Marathon this year. And I will never forget, I trained for it, but I also knew, I believed the whole time I was training, I was like, I'm going to come in last. I'm going to be the slowest person there. I'm not going to look like a runner. I'm going to show up at the start line and everyone's going to be like, ooh, who's that? Like, she's obviously not a runner, not a marathoner, like first timer. And I had major imposter syndrome approaching this adventure of a marathon. And what happened? I showed up at the starting line. I ran the marathon. And people finished in front of me, and people finished behind me. I was in the middle of the pack. I was not the fastest marathoner that day, but I was also far from the slowest. And that has been a theme for me with every adventure undertaking I have pursued, is this limiting belief that I tell myself, and I think a lot of people tell themselves when they approach any kind of adventure, whether it is climbing a mountain, running a marathon, or taking on any sort of challenge, any physical challenge out there. It is a lie to tell yourself that you are not cut out for that thing because you have this picture in your head of what sort of person is cut out for that thing. It's a lie. It's an illusion. And so if you're waiting around to become an Olympic athlete before you sign up for a marathon, or if you're waiting around to, like, for the optimum circumstances to go climb a mountain, just sign up, just go do that thing, because I guarantee you will not be the least fit or the least qualified person out there. There will be someone else out there who's like less qualified than you, but who's doing it. So that's my pep talk to someone who's on the couch and wants to get started with adventure.
Did you hear that? Did you hear it?
I'm talking to you.
She's talking to you. I'm hyped.
The way I'd answer that is by briefly describing our trip around the world in 60 days. So back in 2019, we did an around the world trip in 60 days. It was basically a 2-month. I was on sabbatical, and we filled up our backpacks and flew out of Los Angeles and spent some time in Japan. Then we spent about 2 or 3 weeks doing the Annapurna circuit, which is like 130 mile backpacking trip through the Himalayas. And then we spent 3 weeks or so in a Volkswagen minivan.
Nice.
Traveling through Europe, and then came back through the United States. And I say that because that adventure is like the embodiment of what we love to do, which is use our bodies to be self-sustaining, meaning we only carried with us what I could fit in my backpack, and we lived out of that for an extended period of time. And it had a blend of great food, drinking the world's best coffee in Dubai, like coffee with like gold flakes in it. And then at other moments, we were really struggling to cross, a 17,000-foot pass in the Himalayas. And so it was like this, for us, that's the dream. It's like, how can we use our bodies to do anything we desire to do? And that might mean enjoy the sweet taste of a great coffee. And it also might mean surviving some sort of physical challenge. And so that trip, my sabbatical, is probably one of my favorite experiences. And it's a big experience, kind of all put together into one.
You want to be able to say yes to anything you want to be able to say yes to.
That's right.
Well, and Colby, I've heard you talk about that principle, and maybe you can riff on that a little bit about the say yes curve. I think that's a really great principle and a concept.
What is the say yes curve?
Talk about the say yes curve, Colby.
It's not from me. It's from Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, but defining work capacity. And the goal of doing CrossFit is to increase the work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And I've kind of translated that into someone's ability to say yes to whatever the task, the objective, the activity is. Like the goal of increasing work capacity across broad and time modal domains is to say yes to as much stuff as you want to say yes to. Long stuff, short stuff, heavy stuff, light stuff, hiking, swimming, biking, sipping a Gold Flake coffee. Like you just want to be able to say yes to as much stuff as you can. And like the last thing that I want for anybody inside fitness is, or inside like life, is someone to be like, hey, let's go do this. And you'd be like, I don't think I can. I want to be able to say yes to as much stuff as I can.
My favorite adventure, our Alaska backpacking trip to the Kasugi Ridge, because that was one of the first times we walked. We packed up backpacks, we packed up food, we packed up tents, everything we needed, and we just walked into the backcountry. We did not have plans for where exactly we were going to set up camp that night. We did not have plans for where exactly we were going to get water. There was a trail that we were going to travel, but we did not see a single person for a week on that trail. And that was the first time we didn't have like a checkpoint for where our camp or how many miles we were going to walk and then camp that night. And then day 2 was a certain number of miles. We're just going to go as far as we can and camp where an advantageous campground presents itself. And that to me felt so adventurous. And it felt like a good combination of so many of our outdoorsmanship type skills that we have cultivated over the years, because that was certainly, there are other forms of backpacking where you hike and then you stop at a specific campground and you set up your tent, but there was something really fun about walking into the backcountry with everything that we needed to carry, and a water filter and the dehydrated meals and the ability, obviously we were prepared for everything. But being able to walk into the backcountry and have everything that you needed is incredibly empowering.
It's kind of Survivor-esque.
Very.
Very much so.
Do you guys have one that is a favorite, for one that you led for other people?
Gosh, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, we led our first backpacking trip across to Iceland for a group of college students. And I think that's one of my favorites, because we did something we'd never done before, and that was we had kind of a selection process or a tryout process. And what we did was we had built a trip that necessitated a level of physicality that we knew would be limited.
Wow.
And we knew that what we would be doing might be actually dangerous for someone if they were not prepared. And so we had a process of tryouts, basically, and we vetted students who were applying to go on this trip based on their physical ability, but also their teamwork and their willingness and ability to work on a team well. Because we just knew that what we were planning to do it was not an easy trip, and so we wanted to make sure that we had the right people, and we also had limited space available. And so that trip was one of my favorites because we had some of those components to it.
Wow. I would sign up for something like that. That sounds fun.
Let's do it.
Cecily, what about you?
Same. I
Agreed.
I didn't come up with this. because that is also my favorite, is Iceland for
Cool.
sure.
I love that. That was during the summer, right?
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
done Iceland a couple times with students, and yes, it was always the summer.
Which means there's like a
so
lot of light.
yes, 24-hour daylight. That's one of the trippy things about visiting Iceland, or really
Alaska,
anywhere
too.
with a really high latitude. Yeah, Alaska's the same. Nothing prepares you for waking up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and looking around and realizing that you can still read your Kindle or something like that, and realizing that you did not need the headlamp that you packed at all.
It's wild how much kind of natural energy that gives you. I actually felt like awake regularly, but like not like I couldn't sleep. I just felt energized.
I was going to say the intense seasonal depression might set in when you're getting 1 to 3 hours of sunlight on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah, the reverse of the sunlight would be pretty brutal.
Okay, final thing I want to talk about, guys. I know we've been chatting a little while. Dusty, I know something that is near and dear to your heart is the phrase or the saying that discipline equals freedom. Explain what is meant by the phrase discipline equals freedom, and what are some like practical steps that someone who feels like they're not a disciplined person can take to start that journey to being more disciplined?
It's a great question, and I do love this concept, and that phrase is a Jocko Willink quote, and it also connects with one of my other favorite quotes from a theologian. And this is the theologian's version. Richard Foster says every discipline has its corresponding freedom, and so discipline equals freedom is kind of a filtered down version of that, but the idea is the same, that freedom is built on the back of discipline. Mm-hmm. And what's great about that is that it means that if you want more freedom in any area of your life, you can achieve it. It just takes a little bit of discipline. So if you want more financial freedom, it takes a little bit of discipline. If you want more physical health freedom, it's going to take some discipline. And any area of life, the freedom that you seek is accessible depending upon your willingness to take on discipline. And I love that concept because I think it is the key that unlocks whatever it is that you seek. Right? When you really realize whatever you're seeking can be unlocked by discipline, it allows you to have a plan, it allows you to create a path for that. And so to your question about what can someone do to cultivate discipline, something I've learned in myself and in my work with clients as a coach, as a financial coach, as a life coach, is that no discipline is worth it if you don't have a deep-rooted why or a deep-rooted belief in the vision or what you're trying to do. So going to the gym, going to a hard CrossFit workout, going for a 5-mile run, none of that is worth it unless you believe in what that is bringing you, unless you have clarity on what it is that you're seeking. So no discipline is worth the pain or the feeling of restriction if you don't really know what you want. So my key for people is to find discipline, is to find your vision, find what you're really seeking, what makes you so excited that you have to take on the practice. And that's why one little caveat that I would make is that when I think about discipline, I don't think about discipline as punishment. I think about discipline as a training regimen. So if you think about this from kind of the theological realm, which is what my graduate degree is in, we think of disciplines or spiritual disciplines as being the rituals or practices that one engages in. Well, that comes from this Greek word, askesis, which is the word that we use for asceticism, which is the word that kind of is behind the idea of these spiritual disciplines. And askesis, askio, is the word that is used for training, for preparation. So like in the Greek culture, if a soldier would take on training to develop these skills. And so discipline is training. Discipline is not avoidance. It's not saying what you don't do. Discipline should really say what you are doing. It's what your actions are. So when I think about discipline, it is not refraining from something. It is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so my recommendation for someone who wants more discipline is clarify what you're actually seeking. Make it so clear that it's like a movie in your head, right? You're so inspired by it, and you're writing the movie, so it should be an epic movie. If your vision doesn't sound that great, it's a bad vision. Your vision should be so exciting to you that you cannot wait to take on the discipline, meaning to take on the training regimen for you to achieve that vision and goal.
That actually like hit with something that we talk about with like nutrition. When someone's starting out with nutrition, everyone wants to be like, oh, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing this. And like, that's not the point. The point is to start doing this, start doing this, start doing this. And that's I've never thought about discipline as something like that. Discipline's like, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to refrain from this. No, it's what I am doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. That's a really, really cool mindset shift for how to approach discipline that might make it more motivating. I also think that having a really kick butt vision dream for your life is also really motivating for some discipline too. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with me, guys. It's been a pleasure. How can somebody find you if Cecily, they want some creative work, or Dusty, if they've finally decided that they need a mentor or a coach to work with?
Colby, my website is at cecilybreeding.com, just my name. And that's where you can get in touch with me. You can see my portfolio. Like I said, photography, graphic design, website design. If it's digital, I do it. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to shout out.
For me, 2 different ways. I would say the socials at Dusty Breeding. Cecily's at Cecily Breeding. That's a great way on Instagram, or my website, which is Skull.
Awesome. And we'll link those down in the description below. And I know you guys got some free stuff on your Skull and Bones Society.co as well. So definitely head on over onto that page and grab some of that free stuff. Subscribe to the podcast. Even subscribe to the YouTube channel. We love sharing this stuff with you guys. It helps out a lot to know what you guys are enjoying, what you guys aren't enjoying, what you want to hear more of. So leave some comments, ask some questions, and we'll always get back to you. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Emmanuel, that was so good. Go again.
3, 2, 1, time.